Every time she took a life, she inherited their memories. At 9 years old, little Phán was pushed into a raging river by her own grandmother, sacrificed to make way for an unborn grandson. Yet she survived, emerging from the cold depths with a terrifying new power: the complete absorption of a victim's memories upon their death. She wasn't a hero. She merely sought to survive in a brutal world where children were sold, women exploited, and family was the first to betray you. Phán chose to rise, no matter the cost. She killed. She replaced. She infiltrated the grandest families under stolen identities, clawing her way to the apex of power with blood and cunning. But she didn't know that someone had been silently watching her from the shadows, ever since she was a mere experiment in the darkness. Who was he? Why did he always appear at the most crucial moments? Why did those cold eyes relentlessly haunt her? The instinct of cruelty is the journey of an anti-heroine's revenge, appropriation, and struggle for survival, where every choice is stained with blood, and kindness is the most expensive luxury on earth. It's a game without rules, a battle of instincts. Who is the hunter, and who is the prey? You're listening to The Instinct of Cruelty. I first discovered this ability when I was 9. Our family was so poor that the rice pot was often empty. Living day to day, never knowing where the next meal would come from, was our normal. My name was Phán Đệ, a name as common as dirt in those times. My grandmother, deeply rooted in the preference for male heirs and the strict family planning policies, was obsessed with the idea of crippling me so my parents could have another son. But my mother wasn't even pregnant yet, so my grandmother hadn't dared to act, instead subjecting me to endless verbal abuse. It wasn't until my mother genuinely conceived, and my grandmother somehow learned it was a boy, that her resolve hardened. She was determined for me to yield my place to her dreamed-of grandson. One afternoon, she lured me to the riverbank, promising something good. I hid my hands behind my back, tilted my head, and with an innocent face asked, "Grandma, what do you want to give me?" Her lips moved, then closed, her eyes distant, the last flicker of hesitation extinguished. Then, as if a decision had been made, she grabbed me, forcefully pushing me into the river, muttering, "Phán Đệ, don't blame me. This is your fate." My eyes instantly turned cold. I wrenched myself free from her grip. The next second, her voice fell silent. I tightened my hold on a sharp stone, striking her head again and again. Blood splattered, obscuring my vision. Only when her eyes rolled back and her body went limp, breathless, did I stop, gasping. The bloodied stone rolled into the river. Collapsed, my body aching. My head throbbed, a dizzying pain. Without thinking, I struggled to drag her body into the water. Then I returned home as if nothing had happened. The fleeting shock and worry on my parents' faces made me realize something within me had awakened. My grandmother disappeared. They didn't dare call the police, fearing exposure of their illegal second child and the loss of their unborn son. From that day on, my mind was filled with memories that weren't my own. I quickly processed them, realizing they were her life's memories. Her name was Lai Chiuda. At 16, her parents had forced her to marry my grandfather. Her mind had been molded by her era, rigid and unyielding. She bore 6 children to produce a son, 3 or 4 of whom died young, before finally securing an heir. Then, like her own mother-in-law, she endlessly criticized her daughter-in-law, my mother. To have a grandson, she resorted to all sorts of bizarre folk remedies. And now she wanted to kill me. Was this my fate? I shook my head indifferently, devoid of pity. If I hadn't been wary, if I hadn't known her intentions, I would have been the one to die that day. And they would have lived happily ever after. Fortunately, their plan had been thoroughly disrupted by me. I curled my lips into a malicious smile, contempt bubbling inside. In the following days, they avoided me like the plague, as if I were some grotesque creature. I secretly listened to their conversations, discovering they had arranged to sell me to human traffickers. That night, I quietly locked all the windows, turned on the gas valve, and then waited at the edge of the village for the traffickers to arrive. At dusk, a 3-wheeled vehicle appeared on the small dirt road at the village entrance. Seeing me squatting with my head down, The vehicle slowly stopped in front of me. A man and a woman who looked kind and honest got out. The man looked around, then signaled to the woman. She approached, asking gently, "Little one, why are you sitting here alone?" Suppressing my headache, I stood up, my eyes bright as I looked at them, my voice clear and childish. "Mom and Dad said Auntie would pick me up today to go play in the city. They told me to wait here, but I've never met Auntie before." I tilted my head, offering a naive, innocent smile. "Are you my auntie?" The woman's face brightened. She glanced at the man, nodding repeatedly. "Yes, I'm your auntie. I've come to take you to the city. Come on, get in the car with us." She still seemed uneasy, reaching out to take my hand. I obediently climbed into the vehicle, appearing completely defenseless, like an easily fooled country girl. The man pedaled, turning the vehicle around. The woman, fearing my suspicion, explained, "That's your uncle. He doesn't talk much, don't mind him." "It's okay," I said, retracting my inquisitive gaze, offering a simple smile. This ability was of no immediate use. Other people's memories weren't a shortcut, but they would certainly come in handy someday. On the bumpy ride, I closed my eyes, leaning against the back seat, pretending to sleep, my mind constantly calculating. After more than an hour, as we passed a small town, the three-wheeled vehicle stopped in front of a house. The woman carried me down, saying it was her old house and we would stay the night. I mumbled an acknowledgement, catching a glimpse of the man calling out the homeowner, giving him a cigarette and whispering something. Then, the woman led me into a room, while she and the man stayed in the adjacent room, separated only by a curtain. I woke up in the middle of the night, hearing their whispers. "This kid is so easily fooled, and with that build, she'll definitely fetch a high price." The woman's voice was filled with greed. The man sounded satisfied, his voice sinister. "I know a few buyers who only want pretty girls this age." I shifted, eyes still tightly closed. The next morning, both of them were gone. Suddenly there was a sound outside. A girl my age secretly climbed through the window, grabbing my hand, trying to pull me away. I shook her hand off, hearing her anxiously say, "Don't you want to escape? I came to save you." I frowned, glaring at her, my voice angry. "Who are you? What are you talking about? I came with Auntie, why would I run?" The girl looked at me like I was an idiot, about to say more. Just then the door opened. The homeowner from yesterday stood outside, glancing at the girl. "Time to eat." The girl glared at me, her eyes morphing into resentment, and reluctantly turned away. I blinked blankly after her, an indescribable sense of evil rising within me. After breakfast, I made an excuse to get some water and entered the kitchen. The woman and man paid no attention, as if they were completely at ease. The other girl was eating porridge, saying nothing about what had happened earlier, only giving me an unreadable glance, a mix of contempt and pity. I truly want her memories, I thought, clutching the packet of rat poison in my pocket, my eyes fixed on the bubbling pot of chicken soup. Later they led me to a nearby train station, changing to a bus. The man went inside to buy tickets, and the woman, fearing any mishap, pulled me aside to instruct me. "We're taking the train to the city now. I don't have your household registration, so I couldn't buy you a ticket. Later, just follow us in and don't let anyone see you." Seeing my wide, dark eyes looking at her, she patted my head reassuringly. "It's okay. When they check tickets, just hide for a bit, don't say anything and it'll be fine." I nodded obediently, offering a reassuring smile. Yes, I remember. The train station was bustling with noise, mostly villagers preparing to go to the city. The man bought 2 return tickets. Seeing that I wasn't crying or fussing, he relaxed and began chatting with the woman. Catching the smell of cigarette smoke on him, I frowned, annoyed. "Uncle, please don't smoke anymore, it makes me feel uncomfortable." The man stopped talking, his expression changing slightly, but he ultimately put out the cigarette. "Let's go." He pulled both of us into the crowd towards the security gate. There was only one person in charge of security, and the checks were perfunctory. I just needed to quietly follow the woman to get on the train. We found our compartment, and after the man put away the luggage, he told me to rest on the bunk. It'll be a long time before we depart, so you should rest first. When they check tickets, hide well. If you're caught, you'll be kicked off at the next station. There were already 3 or 4 passengers in the compartment. Some were noisily talking on the phone, others casually smoking. None of them seemed to care about anything. I nodded and climbed onto the lower bunk, pulling the blanket over myself. Outside, the corridor was loud, people constantly coming and going, vendors pushing their carts and shouting out their wares. I focused on the light blue blanket, as if watching a movie of the girl's memories. The 2 kidnappers were professional traffickers of women and children. The family in the town yesterday were their accomplices. The mother of that girl had also been kidnapped. She died after giving birth. Growing up in such an environment, the girl had quickly become part of the trafficking ring. Whenever they caught new merchandise and stayed overnight, she would secretly tell the victims that she was there to save them, telling them to follow her. Seeing a gentle, harmless girl, the kidnapped women would easily trust her. But once they agreed to follow, she would lead them straight back to the traffickers, revealing her true colors. Those victims would be tortured even more brutally. And she would be rewarded, both a victim and an accomplice. The girl was endlessly fascinated by that cruel game, though she wasn't lucky either. I pulled the blanket off my head, taking a deep breath. At least only she died in that house. What a pity. The 2 traffickers paced back and forth around the train compartment, occasionally glancing at me as if afraid I would run away. I felt a slight need to use the restroom. The woman immediately stood up and offered to go with me. As I opened the compartment door, I inadvertently caught a glimpse of a young man with long hair entering the adjacent car. White skin, a long neck, and a silver necklace. It was just a glance, but my body immediately tensed, as if an instinctual warning flared. My heart pounded. I tried to suppress the unease, acting as if nothing was wrong, and left the compartment. After using the restroom, I returned and lay back down on the bunk, my mind consumed by the image of that stranger. I dozed off for a while. When I woke up, I heard the 2 traffickers saying they were hungry and wanted to go buy some instant noodles. "It should be fine to leave the kid here," the man whispered. "Yeah, I just connected with a new contact." Their whispers faded. I immediately sat up and observed the people around me. Seeing everyone busy with their own affairs, no one paying attention to me, I quietly approached the man's backpack. I quickly rummaged inside, pulled out a fruit knife, hid it in my pocket, and then put everything back as it was. Then I returned to my bunk, pretending to sleep again. The 2 returned and woke me, handing me a box of noodles. I ate quickly, then threw the empty box onto the table. The man went out to observe for a moment, then came back and signaled to the woman. "The ticket check for our compartment is in about 10 minutes. When it's time, tell the kid to hide under the bunk, just for a few minutes." The woman nodded, pretending to threaten me again. "The next station is in half an hour. Don't make a sound then, just stay put, or you can forget about going to the city." I nodded boredly, already planning my next move, only to be caught off guard by what happened next. At first, everything went exactly as the 2 traffickers had planned. As soon as the ticket inspector entered, I obediently crawled into the gap under the bunk, silent and still. The other passengers in the compartment ignored me, not wanting to get involved. Just as the inspector left, and the woman was about to call me out, bang! A gunshot echoed from the corridor. Then came screams of chaos and frantic footsteps. I froze, immediately pushing the woman away, retreating further under the bunk. The man, panicked, tried to run out to sea, but she held him back. A few more gunshots rang out, and the compartment door was kicked open. Everyone shrieked, objects flew everywhere, accompanied by ear-splitting gunshots. 1, 2, 7 shots. I clamped my hand over my mouth, counting silently. Unending screams echoed, blood splattering the floor. The man was hit in the stomach, collapsing, blood gushing out. He groaned in pain, his lips moving towards me. "Help me!" Was everyone dead? Amidst the bloody scene, a sense of exhilaration mixed with tension surged through my mind. Tears instinctively welled up. I licked them, tasting the salty bitterness. Thump, thump, thump. A pair of high-laced military boots moved around the compartment, finally stopping beside my bunk. Time seemed to freeze. A black pistol dropped to the ground, its barrel pointed directly at my head. My body trembled uncontrollably, forcing myself to stare into the dark muzzle. The next second, a slender hand picked up the gun, a finger resting on the trigger. After a few seconds, he lifted the gun and turned to leave. I didn't dare move until I heard gunshots from the next compartment. Then I gasped, finally able to breathe. I crawled closer to the man, putting my hand under his nose. He was still breathing very faintly. Not dead yet. A bold idea sparked in my mind. I fumbled for the fruit knife in my pocket, my hand trembling as I aimed directly for his heart. I closed my eyes, summoning all my strength, and plunged it down. Blood spurted again. He convulsed, then lay still. After it was done, I collapsed back under the bunk, my head hitting the wall. In his memories, I saw the killer from before. He wore a mask, his long hair obscuring his face, revealing only a pair of eyes. Those eyes were cold and insane. I couldn't hold on any longer and closed my eyes, drifting into unconsciousness. So I didn't see. When the train announced its approach to the next station, the compartment door was pushed open again. A pale, slender hand quietly withdrew the knife still embedded in his corpse. When I woke again, I was outside the train station, which was now cordoned off by the police. A group of medical personnel placed me on a stretcher to check my condition. Seeing me awaken, everyone sighed in relief and quickly called over the police officer standing nearby. A serious murder in the area had left his face grim, but when he faced me, he tried to soften his voice. "How do you feel? Can you answer a few questions?" I stared blankly, saying nothing, only letting out a soft retch. The officer, concerned I was traumatized, immediately told the doctor to take me to the hospital to rest. To protect me, the only witness, they even assigned 2 people to stay by my side. I remained silent, looking around, when I suddenly saw a familiar silhouette move through the crowd. Something silver flashed and then disappeared. I averted my gaze, my expression calm, a premonition rising within me. I would see him again. Later, the police questioned me several times. I recounted almost everything truthfully, but I held back some details. When they asked about my parents, I simply said I couldn't remember. My parents don't want me anymore. Bad people kidnapped me. Anyway, I have nowhere to go, and I didn't even think about escaping. In those days, in the countryside, the preference for male children was still common. Seeing my sad expression, the police only gently consoled me like a child. When asked about what happened on the train, I only said that I had hidden under the bunk to avoid the ticket check and was lucky to escape. However, I did provide one clue. I saw the killer's shoes. They were just normal men's leather shoes. I nodded emphatically. Because it was a remote train station, the camera system was very blurry, with many blind spots. And when the train arrived at the city station, a flood of passengers poured into the car, stumbled upon the bloody scene, and panicked, running out with people from other cars. Because of the sheer number of people, the scene became chaotic, with trampling making the investigation even more difficult. The assailant also had a gun. This should have been a crucial clue, but it was ultimately dismissed as lax security. Just as I suspected, the case quickly reached a dead end, the culprit vanishing without a trace. The reason I didn't dare to disclose everything, besides an vague, unnameable feeling within me, was a more important reason. The fruit knife was gone. The police had quickly discovered the suspicious point. The knife wound was the actual cause of death, not the gunshot. Someone with a gun would have no reason to use a knife to kill. They didn't consider any other possibility than the killer having left with the knife. He had clearly seen me, yet he hadn't killed me. 'Cause I, too, was an accomplice. The serious case stirred public opinion. Because of it, I was adopted by an orphanage. There I noticed a girl my age. She arrived a few months after me, wearing an expensive dress and a pretty hair clip. When she first arrived, she cried endlessly, screaming that she wasn't an orphan, that her father would surely come for her. But the director only glanced at her, her eyes full of hidden meaning, and then ignored her cries. With no other choice, the girl was forced to stay. Everyone disbelieved her story, but I felt that things weren't that simple. The next night after dinner, a 13-year-old boy snatched her meal and pushed her to the ground, intending to teach the newcomer a lesson. I, who had always been cold and indifferent, carried my own tray of food and walked over to her, gently helping her up. The boy was startled. I smiled softly and said, "Could you please give her meal back?" He instinctively backed away, then turned and snatched the food container from his subordinate, muttering, Sorry, I just had enough, don't be angry." With that, he dragged the other two boys and scurried away. The girl looked at me with a mix of suspicion and gratitude. I smiled, extending my hand to her. "My name is Juan. What's yours?" "Han Tin," she replied softly, her voice small, graceful. "And Tin, huh?" I nodded, narrowing my eyes in a smile. "Next time something like this happens, just fight back. Otherwise, you'll only be bullied more." I was also bullied when I first came here. That boy had torn my notebook and violently pulled my hair. Without a word, I pulled out a ballpoint pen and stabbed him in the hand. From then on, no one dared to touch me, but no one dared to get close either. Only this girl seemed interesting. I looked deeply into her eyes. "And Tin, let's be friends." "Okay." She lowered her guard, but her next sentence made me feel uneasy. "My family is very rich. When my father comes to pick me up, I'll definitely not forget you." I showed no doubt, smiling and responding with a few words, but a guilty thought had already taken root in my mind. Over the next 4 years, Han Tin and I became close friends. She told me about her background. She said her father was the head of the Ha Corporation, a man of extremely noble status. She was originally the Ha family's only pampered daughter. I felt suspicious and asked why she had been sent to an orphanage and why her father hadn't found her after all these years. Han Tin sat beside me by the lake behind the orphanage, her expression lonely. "When I was 6, my mother died, and my father brought home a new woman. She became my stepmother, and not long after, she became pregnant with a son. Father stopped caring about me. Then one day it was just her and me at home. She fell down the stairs and lost the baby. She clutched the doll in her arms, swaying her legs. She blamed me for pushing her, for causing her miscarriage. I was young then, I didn't know how to defend myself, I just cried and explained, but no one believed me. Father was completely disappointed. Everyone said I was a bad child." She rested her chin in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "Everyone abandoned me." I placed my hand on her shoulder, gently comforting her. "It's okay. You're not wrong, but how could they be so cruel?" Hearing this, Han Tin clenched her hands, shaking her head. "I don't know either. Once when I went out, some men said they were my father's friends. Then they drugged me and took me away. When I woke up, I was already in this orphanage." She still wore the same hair clip from all those years ago, though her appearance had changed significantly. I quietly watched her in the quiet setting. Now that I think about it, it must have been that woman's trick to make way for her son. She glared at the lake, seething. I always wanted to go back but couldn't contact anyone outside. A stone was thrown into the water, and the flock of birds in the forest scattered, startled. I stood up, looking down at her shadow, a clear answer forming in my mind. If that were truly the case, Han Tin's father couldn't possibly be unaware. Otherwise, he wouldn't have failed to find his daughter for 4 years. The fact that she was sent to the orphanage clearly meant the director was also bribed by her stepmother. I pulled back my heavy gaze, a faint smirk on my lips. She truly was foolish, single-handedly ruining her best hand. Then let me replace her. I will become Han Tin. After dinner, the children discovered Ha and Tin's body in the lake. Upon hearing the news, the director's first reaction was extreme panic. She immediately ordered the children, including me, not to breathe a word, then secretly buried the body in the wasteland behind the mountain in the middle of the night. I knew why she was so afraid. The day before, when returning books at the library, I had accidentally passed the director's office and overheard a phone call. Don't worry. Tin is doing very well here. No one will know about this. A man's voice was on the other end, but I couldn't hear clearly. The director bowed humbly. The day after tomorrow you'll come pick up the girl. Of course. I didn't dare to listen further, hugged my books, and turned to leave. Although I didn't know why her father suddenly wanted to pick her up, for me it was good news, a wonderful opportunity to leave this place. The next morning I knocked on the director's office door. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she impatiently asked what I wanted. I held a fairy tale book in my hand, my eyes wide and sparkling. Teacher, I don't understand something in this story. She took the book, flipped through it casually, then grumbled. What don't you understand? You're old enough, why are you still reading children's stories? It's the part where the witch takes the princess's place in the palace, I said, smiling, the hair clip by my ear making me look strangely pretty. Can I do that too, teacher? As soon as the question left my lips, the director suddenly looked up at me. When she saw the hair clip, she stiffened, muttering, Warren, it's you. I covered my mouth and laughed. What are you talking about? I'm in Tin, right? I was picked up by Ha Fai, the patriarch of the Ha family, and taken to their mansion. He was Ha and Tin's biological father, and he treated me with great care, feigning remorse. From his false apologies, I pieced together the whole story. 5 years ago his younger son, Ha Tuan, was born, and no one cared whether she lived or died. Or perhaps they knew, but because they had their precious son, they allowed the stepmother to act. Otherwise, why would they only look for her now? But a month ago, Ha Tuan, home alone, somehow escaped the attic, fell down the stairs and died. The incident was exposed. The stepmother and the boy became the laughingstock of high society. Her father was preparing for a divorce. The media began digging up the story of the Ha family's biological daughter mysteriously disappearing. Being ignored for years, conspiracy theories erupted. Ha Fai couldn't sit still any longer and finally found a way to bring his daughter home. Han Tin and I had similar builds. After 5 years, a change in appearance was normal. The hair clip I wore was the most convincing proof of my identity. Not to mention, he genuinely didn't remember what his real daughter looked like. Upon returning home, he treated me meticulously, making up for everything. But I saw him secretly pick up a strand of my hair that had fallen on the sofa, tucking it into a clear plastic bag. I was well prepared too. In the sprawling mansion, I clenched the strand of hair in my hand, gently closing the bedroom door, leaving it just ajar. From then on, Ha Fai no longer guarded against me, buying me many fruits to compensate. When I saw a stuffed rabbit among the fruits, I immediately rushed into his arms, crying like a child. Wah, Mom once gave me this rabbit and I lost it. I hate you, Dad. Why did you bring me back? He patted my back, soothing me gently, a flicker of genuine remorse in his eyes. He had probed me many times, but I always remembered every detail of my childhood. Finally, he dismissed his suspicions. I buried my face in his shoulder, shedding a few indifferent tears. From the moment I returned to the Ha family, I had been investigating. Ha Tuan was locked in the attic, with someone delivering his meals daily. As for the stepmother, her beauty faded, her ability to bear children lost, abandoned by him, becoming a plaything for the wealthy. He might have had some feelings for me, but he certainly had other schemes. For example, a marriage alliance. Just a few months after my return, he transferred me to a prestigious high school, beginning to train my abilities. All just so the Ha family wouldn't lose face. I obeyed, diligently absorbing everything in high society. My roots were now deeply planted in this dark soil. It was time to rise. For 3 years, no matter how excellently I performed, Ha showed no intention of letting me inherit his assets. He found one mistress after another, his only goal being to father another princely heir. I continued to play the role of the obedient, virtuous daughter, not revealing any dissatisfaction, until a small incident occurred. One day when no one was home, Ha somehow escaped the attic, fell down the stairs and died. The housemaid who delivered his meals was fired and left the country with money. No one bothered with Ha death, but I discovered a terrifying truth. His mental state was likely deliberately caused by someone else. His memories were chaotic, no clear complete images. But in one instant I saw those same eyes from years ago, both smiling and not, sending a chill down my spine. In fact, 10 years ago I had a premonition that he was connected to my ability. But who exactly was he? Why did he keep appearing around me? A violent surge of agitation suddenly rose within me. To vent my suppressed anger, I returned to the old orphanage and killed Director Hua, in the name of repaying a favor. Only the dead keep secrets forever. I strived to climb higher, wanting greater power to kill without being detected. But that led me to discover an even more chilling truth. Throughout my 5 years at the orphanage, that long-haired young man visited several times each year under the guise of a philanthropist. His identity was very discreet. He was definitely someone from the super-rich elite. The first time he visited, he had the director give each child a stuffed animal. I didn't think much of it, placing my doll by the head of my bed. Han Tin, however, treasured hers, carrying it everywhere. After realizing this detail, I immediately returned to the orphanage and snatched a doll from a child. I tore open the stuffing in its belly, and behind its eyeball was a tiny camera. The child panicked and burst into tears. I stared directly into the camera's lens, then crushed it. For 5 years, I had been unknowingly monitored. From then on, I always tried to track him down, but it was useless. The helplessness fueled my frustration. At the same time, my father brought home a pregnant mistress. He had recognized my ambition. He clearly stated that the Ha family's assets would only be inherited by the child in that woman's womb. To cut off my hopes, he even planned to marry me off to Lam Du, the disabled eldest son of the Lam family. I had private connections in high society, so I knew who he was. He was over a decade older than me, with a dark personality, unstable moods, and a reputation for being erratic. But he was the mastermind behind a series of major pharmaceutical and biotech companies. If not for his disability, he would have been a prize fought over by countless tycoons. I was displeased but didn't react outwardly, only secretly delaying, subtly planning. When the time came, I would seize his memories, and then seize the entire Ha family. But perhaps due to overconfidence, I underestimated him. Just as I was about to act against the pregnant woman, Ha Fai immediately handed me over to Lam Du. When I woke from the anesthetic, I found myself lying on a cold device, my limbs restrained. As soon as I opened my eyes, I faced those eyes. The haunting eyes from my memories. A long-haired man in a white lab coat was putting on gloves. "It's you after all," I said coldly. He calmly took out a syringe, his tone mocking. "I didn't originally intend for you to know this early, but who knew you'd be so proactive? So clever." He struggled to suppress the madness in his eyes. "You truly are my most perfect specimen." I glared at the needle moving closer. "What are you going to do?" He didn't answer, only whispered, 19 years ago, I genetically modified you, and you are exactly as I expected." "Impossible," I frowned, trying to stay calm. 19 years ago you were just a kid. How could you have done that?" "Wrong, my dear." His slender finger rested on my lips, emitting a soft laugh. "Only this body is in its teens." In my astonished eyes, the smile at the corner of his lips became more pronounced. "I am also a monster. A monster who can take over other people's bodies." No wonder. I remembered the documents I had painstakingly investigated about him. Lam Du was famously known as a spoiled brat with a terrible temper, constantly indulging in frivolous pleasures. But at 15 he suddenly had an accident, losing both his legs, and from then on, used his disability as an excuse to gradually disappear from public view. Now that I thought about it, it was all just a pretense. Afterwards, under the guise of an heir, he secretly infiltrated secret companies, building his own power. How could a person change so completely? There was only one possibility. The real Lam Du had been possessed. He wanted to use the Lam Corporation to conduct his antisocial experiments. So was I just an experimental subject? He enjoyed the pleasure of killing, just like an outsider observing and watching the evil he sowed gradually sprout and blossom. I was the product of the same type he created, inheriting a part of his ability. Of course there could be more. Lam Du caressed my trembling skin, his voice gentle as if comforting me. You were originally an experimental subject I meticulously nurtured, the most perfect vessel, a completely new identity, replacing the disabled and inconvenient Lam Du. Isn't that an ideal choice? Seeing that I still showed no expression, he paused for a moment. But you are too perfect, so much so that I couldn't bear to replace you. So, the drug was injected into your body. The silver necklace on Lam Du's neck dangled, touching my numb hand. His gentle voice seemed to drown out the madness within him. My dear, we will be immortal. Half a month later, I was brought back to the Ha family. Before Ha Fai's false solicitude, I appeared to concede, agreeing to the marriage alliance. I behaved obediently for 2 months, and the child in the woman's womb was born, a baby boy. Ha Fai was overjoyed, taking his new family of 3 on a honeymoon to a distant sea. During a trip to an island, all 3 suddenly disappeared. Local police searched for days, finally finding the bodies of Ha Fai and the woman at sea. Only the month-old child vanished without a trace. The Ha family's assets consequently fell entirely into my hands. Initially, the shareholders protested, but witnessing my control and business acumen, all fell silent. I married Lam Du, a business marriage. The company's clandestine operations and secret experiments gradually expanded. In the 4th year of our marriage, he died in a sudden accident. I officially inherited the corporation. The Lam family shareholders did not accept that the family business had fallen into an outsider's hands and clamored to sue. At that moment I held a press conference. I publicly revealed my 4-year-old son Lam So. At the press conference, my face was full of sorrow and I calmly explained, Lam So is the son of Mr. Lam and me. Concerned that an early public announcement would affect his life and development, we chose to keep it a secret. Now that Mr. Lam has unexpectedly passed away, I am heartbroken. Lam So is his only bloodline, and the only future heir. Beside me, Lam So tightly held my hand, the silver necklace around his neck shimmering with a cold light. I bowed deeply to the cameras. Please allow us to live in peace.